Hey everyone, this is Michelle from Careertopia, and today we are talking with Rachel Hofstetter, author of the new book, Cooking Up a Business, Lessons from Food Lovers Who Turn Their Passion into a Career and How You Can Too. Rachel has previously served as food editor for the Oprah magazine. She's served in a capacity as a magazine writer and is now balancing her time between writing books and running Guesterly, an amazing product known as the Ultimate Wedding Playbill. With a varied career like that, I have a variety of questions for her. So thanks for being with us today, Rachel.
Oh, Michelle, I'm so thrilled to join.
Excellent. Well, you have called yourself a food entrepreneur groupie. So how did that unique situation develop?
I love it. That's what you started with. Great, great thing. So when I was a food editor for Oprah, part of my job was doing recipes and stories and things like that, but it was also to know what was new and up and coming on the food scene. And so to do that, it's called market work. And you go out to these trade shows, things like, they're called Expo West, Fancy Food, these big, big trade shows every year. And then also you have what's called desk sides, where companies, and very often as it turned out, the entrepreneurs of small up-and-coming companies come in and they talk about their product and their story. You spend like 15 to 30 minutes getting to know each other, getting to know why they're great, and on the surface, getting to know why you should write about them. Along the way of doing all of that, I just fell in love with their stories. Every single person was so inspiring. They'd switched careers, or they'd done it against odds, or they'd started this company when they were 21, or they were doing something that everyone in the industry said couldn't be done, or they were mortgaging their house times 10 to get this dream of theirs off the ground. And it was just started to be that thing where you're like, you're amazing. You're working so hard. You're making such a big impact. And so that's where it really started, was meeting these fantastic entrepreneurs over and over again and starting to say, wow, yes, your product is delicious. Yes, your goat cheese is amazing. But what's really exciting is the story behind it. So I would say that's where it started from.
Gotcha. Yeah, the story makes all the difference for me personally. Like in the sports arena, I'm not a super sports fan, and I'm certainly not a golf fan. But if I watch a backstory on like Bubba Watson, then you can get me to watch the whole Masters.
Oh, exactly. Or like in the Olympics, where they have those little backstories about some gymnast from Romania or something. Your heart goes out to it. You get involved. You get emotionally invested when you know a story. And I think that's exactly what happened with me and food entrepreneurs. Was the more I heard their stories, the more emotionally invested I was in their products and what they were doing and what their dreams were.
Yeah, that's very...
And the food tasted better. The food tasted better. I always say that. When you know the story, the food tastes better.
That's fun. So how did you get into the food magazine business originally?
Oh, that's a great question. I actually came at it from an environmental angle, which is why it's fun for me to write about business now. For example, I major in economics, do a lot of economic stuff, environmental stuff, and I originally got into food from that angle to share, how food was both impacted by and impacting our environmental sustainability. And over the years, obviously branched out into other things, did some culinary training, things like that. But yeah, I came into it from there. And anything in magazines, side note into kind of how magazines work is you get an internship, you make connections, you make friends, and you just see what doors open up and where things go. So,
right, interesting. Well, it's clear from your writing and the other research I've done on you, it's clear that you love what you do. And was there ever a point in the process that you had that aha moment when you knew, like, this is what I'm supposed to do?
That's a great question. Well, actually, I'm going to go back in my career a little bit and talk about how a little bit more maybe even how I got into magazines, which I love to do. You're making me think, Michelle. This is great. I feel like I've had multiple careers over the years, and there is a moment with each of them. But I will say the first aha moment for me was in college. I interned in so many different things. I think I changed my major, over 10 times. I interned at a physical therapy place. I did all sorts of different things. And my very last semester of college, I moved to New York from Ohio, where I was going to school. And got an internship at a magazine called Cosmo Girl. Fantastic internship, was doing it 4.5 days a week. And here's the thing, every single morning I woke up and I was so excited to go to work that day. And that's the moment where it was like, wow, I have never loved this so much. This is what I'm going to do. And so I spent, the next almost a decade doing that, which was a ton of fun. And the same thing with food. Once you get into food and you just can't stop thinking about it and playing with it. And then the same thing happens with food entrepreneurs. You go, wow, these people are amazing. I want to keep talking about them and doing it. And it actually segues into what I'm doing today, which is running my own company. It's that same thing. You wake up every morning, you jump out of bed, usually a little bit more now because there's a fire or something you have to put out. But it's great. That's the feeling when you just want to get up and keep working on it nonstop. And it can be, Thanksgiving Day, and yes, you're going to go celebrate with your family, but also, you just want to work on your thing for a little bit just to get it in there. And so I think that's when you kind of know is when you really love doing it, which sounds cliche. And it doesn't mean that there's not parts you don't like. I do want to stress that, and I learned that so much even from writing my book and talking to all these successful entrepreneurs. Loving what you do does not mean you love every single part of it, but it means you love the majority of it. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because there's always going to be something we don't like, and our goal at Careertopia is helping people find, the perfect career fit. But you're right, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not going to be some difficulty or some skill of yours that you use that's maybe not that you're in your top 5, or that people that you have to interact with that you would rather not at times. There's always going to be a little bit of that. You're going for the majority of the time. You're not, you're on the more positive side of things.
Exactly. And also, Michelle, sometimes it's going to be hard and intense and stressful, but it doesn't mean it's not good. My friend Campbell said something recently that I'd love to share, which is that, stress is the delta between the skills you have and the skills you need to have. And so you need to have those skills, but yes, the change to get there from where you are is going to be hard sometimes. But once you know that that's just part of, moving your career along, it's okay.
Right. Yeah, those deltas are necessary and sometimes painful, but they're not.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to avoid them, right? Avoidance is not the goal. So when you were bouncing around, now that's my term, not your term, but when you talked about your many internships where you were basically taking samples of different careers, which is something we highly encourage, because so many times, we hop into college and we major in something because we have an interest or someone expects something of us or along those lines. And then at the end, you don't really have ever tested it out, and then you get hired into that area and you go, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. So internships are invaluable. But is there a time through that process when you were trying out a bunch of different potential careers that, again, you had an aha moment where you're like, oh, this is not the one?
Yes. Actually, I'll go back to that physical therapy one. And I think what the physical therapy internship made me realize, I was an athlete. I was really into sports. I thought this was great. It combines my love of all of those. And what I realized in that situation, which is that physical therapy, you're doing a lot of the same things, every day. You're doing the same exercises. You're doing a lot of the same things. Yes, each patient is different. But for me, it felt too much the same. And what that made me realize about myself is that I like to be constantly doing brand new things, new people, new experiences. And in magazines, for example, I got that. I was always interviewing new people, doing new stories, doing entirely new concepts. And the same thing, obviously, with being an entrepreneur myself. Every single day is new, and I've never seen anything like it before. But I think what was so helpful about that, Michelle, was figuring out what part of the physical therapy internship wasn't for me. It wasn't that I didn't love the people. To be honest, the life-work balance of it all was so attractive, so nice. I liked the actual getting things done and moving people along. But I realized for myself it was just too much of the same thing every single day. And being able to know that made me able to go out and look and say, okay, this is something that's a sticking point for me, so how can I solve it in the next thing I try? So I think it's not just even looking at oh, I don't like this, but saying what part of this experience do I want to change?
Exactly. Yep. That's how we encourage folks, because that's so valuable. And I spent, early times in my career just getting to a point in a certain position, and I wouldn't go any further. I'd realize, this isn't for me, and then let's find the next thing. But I didn't stop to do that analysis. And now that I've become familiar with a lot of the tools that we use, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I had only done this assessment or done this exploration 20 years ago, what, might I be doing now, which I would probably be doing what I'm doing now, but a decade earlier, because that I would have, followed that path and gone through that series of questions to myself. So good job on you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I'll have to share some stories from cooking up a business too, but I feel like I don't know. I'm trying to think what their aha moments were with that type of situation as well, because we have a lot of career changes and people who did something else before they started their own food companies. But what I found is very similar to that internship story, is there's certain things that both excite you and invigorate you and that you're good at. And those skills don't necessarily have to be something that you would normally show up on a resume, but they translate so well to running your own business, and especially your own food business, because in a food business, the hard skills you need are not very, they're not very specialized. If you can read a recipe, if you can, make things happen in the kitchen, you can basically start your own food business this weekend. But it's those skills that are less resume worthy, for example, or not resume worthy, but less apparent on a resume, which is the ability to orchestrate a group of people around something, or the ability to inspire someone to get behind you. I think those are what really translate for people from career 1 to career 2. And so it's that same sort of thing of looking at your career 1, what doesn't work, but also what works. And then, especially if you're interested in entrepreneurship, how does that line up with something that you might be doing every day?
Right, yeah, because your career set extends past, any. Your skill set extends past the technical skills that you have, or accreditations, or what you studied in school. There's there's a variety more, and which are really more valued in a hiring perspective, but they're just so hard to nail down on a resume. So I agree with you there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, regarding the content within your book, what I said already, what I love about cooking up a business is the story element. But one of the things that I was interested in, one of the topics you cover, are the wins and the mistakes of some of the food entrepreneurs. And is there any story regarding their wins and mistakes that stands out most to you?
Oh, goodness. I love this. Actually, I think every story I made on purpose to include one of their mistakes, because that's what you want to know. As we see these companies on grocery store shelves, and we know they're on 20,000 grocery store shelves, which, by the way, is basically about half of every grocery store shelf in America. So if I say 20,000, that means that 1 out of every 2 people could walk into their local grocery store and pick it up, which is a huge, huge deal. And you're like, wow, they just had it like magic. It was so easy. And the thing that's been really inspiring and comforting to learn as I wrote this book and interviewed people is that it wasn't always easy. And if they make mistakes, it's okay if you make mistakes. It's okay if I make mistakes. And it's okay if sometimes things are hard. But let's see, what do I want to talk about? I'm going to talk about Justin Gold, who started a company called Justin's Nut Butters. And he's in cooking up a business, and we talk about, his beginning story, which is so fortuitous. So Justin was, a ski bum, and at heart he loved to ski and snowboard and hike and be outdoors. So as soon as he graduated from college, he moved to Colorado. He got a house with a bunch of roommates, and they would wait tables by night and be outside doing all sorts of fun, outdoorsy, athletic things during the day. And Justin was a vegetarian, and so he's like, I needed a lot of energy, I needed a lot of fuel, and he started eating a lot of nut butter, peanut butter, almond butter. But that was one of his cheap sources of protein, and so after a while it got kind of boring. He started mixing it up, adding things in. He was also on a budget, so then he started making his own nut butters. And he would put these homemade nut butters in an old jar, it could have been a salsa jar or something like that, and he put it in an old jar and put it in his cupboard. And what happens is all those roommates, 20-something guys living in Colorado who were just skiing all day, they'd say, oh, this looks delicious, and take a bite. And so Justin had to start writing with big Sharpie markers, Justin, do not touch, across the jars. And that was when his roommate said, hey, dude, by the way, this stuff is amazing. You should think about selling it. And so such a fortuitous beginning to what's become a very, very large and successful company. And Justin ended up taking that nut butter, calling it the same thing, Justin's, selling it at farmer's market, very quickly getting a Whole Foods account and then an account that went national. But after he had jars for a little while, and this was while he was still local in Colorado, and things were moving, they were moving, but it wasn't blowing up. It wasn't that kind of exponential, explosive growth that makes you want to tell stories. It was a really nice boutique brand. And then Justin had this idea. He said, wow, there's all these little power packs of carbohydrates, the power gels and stuff at REI, where he had a day job so he could make money to really support his business. He's like, wow, I should do that with peanut butter, like squeeze packs of peanut butter. And so he raised money from his friends and family, I think $80,000, and
wow,
buy a machine to make sample packs. Well, not sample packs. He was calling them, power packs. And little teeny, basically 100-calorie packs of nut butters. And he's like, oh, they're perfect for REI. We'll sell them as active food for, extreme athletes. And it took literally over a year to get the machine, to manufacture these, to pick the new label. He poured tons of money into it. And finally he had his thing, so he sent them to REI. And waiting for a response. And then in the meantime, he dropped them off at Whole Foods. And he said, hey, I know you sell my nut butters. I have these new energy packs. I'd like to put them next to your Clif bars, next to your extreme athlete stuff. And the store manager says, great, put them in. We love your nut butters. We'll try it. And here's the thing, Michelle. Nothing happened. Nothing moved at Whole Foods. REI said, thanks, but no thanks. And it's like cricket silence. And Justin's thinking, oh, wow. I just put my whole life savings. I basically just put, a lot of my parents' life savings, my friends' money. My mom thinks I'm like a failed peanut butter entrepreneur. She's so embarrassed. Nothing happened. And then the Whole Foods manager calls and says, yeah, Justin, these aren't moving. I need you to come pick them up. There's just nobody's buying them. Thanks for dropping them off. But, yeah, not going to work. And Justin goes, oh, wow. His first instinct was like, hey, what am I going to do? But he also believed in these. He's like, I don't know why people aren't buying them, but I still believe in them. But talk about a low moment, right? He just spent the last year of his life basically trying to get this new product, this small peanut butter pack, onto shelves. And now nobody's even remotely interested in it.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking.
And so, exactly, it's the worst feeling ever. It's like, oh, wow, this is not working. But instead of giving up, this is what I love. He thought about it for a long time. And he said, here's the thing. Nobody knew what a peanut butter protein pack was.
Yeah, and in his little world, that made sense. But in the rest of the world, that's not what we do with peanut butter.
Exactly. You nailed it. And so he's like, wow, nobody, without a huge marketing budget to put behind it, nobody knew what it was. And that's the thing, if he could have put marketing and made everybody believe in the power of protein squeeze packs, that would be great. But he didn't have, obviously, he had no money left. And so he's like, let me see if I do one tweak. And so he called the Whole Foods guy back up and he said, I have one more chance. I just want to move them somewhere else in the store for a week. That's all I'm going to do. 1 week, let's see where they go. And he brings them home. He actually reconfigured his machine. He printed new labels that kind of de-emphasized the protein power pack and just made it pure nut butter. Here's almond butter, here's peanut butter. And he went in the store and placed those right next to his jars of almond butter and peanut butter. And here's what happened. Here's the best part. Sales took off immediately. But not only did sales of the squeeze packs take off, sales of his jars of almond and nut butter took off. And sales of Whole Foods almond butter took off. Wow. Across the board, sales just rose rapidly. And here's what it was. Is Now these squeeze packs were whatever people wanted them to be. They were portion control size, they were kid size, they were on-the-go size, lunchbox size, and most importantly, they were trial size. And so people would try, say, an almond butter squeeze pack, which was available for 99 cents, and that was so much less intimidating than getting, your $10 jar of almond butter. And so all of a sudden they try it, they like it, and they come back and they buy a whole jar the next week. And it was just one of those unprecedented success stories. And actually now wherever Justin's goes, they always sell both together. They never sell just the squeeze pack, because what they find is that having both together, you need the full-size jar to explain basically what the squeeze pack is. But then once you have the squeeze pack, people are much more likely to come back and buy the full-size jar. And so right when that happened, literally sales of both took off in tandem, and it's been a wild ride for Justin ever since.
Oh, wow.
So anyways, I wanted to share that as an example of, there's such moments of lows, and there are mistakes you make that can be as simple as maybe it's the wrong grocery store placement that can affect everything you do about the business. And yet when you solve those, when you realize those, the success is just exhilarating.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that story because, I have recently someone recommended to me, I think it was sunflower seed butter as a replacement for peanut butter. She's like, the flavor's as good and way less sugar. You should try it. I said, okay. So I went to the store and it was $12. And I said, no.
Mm-hmm.
But if there had been a 99-cent pack of it, I would have tried it.
Exactly. And it was letting that pack speak for itself. It was letting the customer say, or maybe you're like me who would eat peanut butter all day long if I could. It's probably my very favorite food. And so I love Justin's squeeze packs because oh, okay, here's one serving of peanut butter. Like, that's all you're going to eat. So
here's my
it becomes a different thing. Yeah. So that's what I love. It's so inspiring, right? There's such an aha moment in there. But you have to have that valley of despair sometimes before you really get your aha moment.
That's fantastic. Well, him figuring that out also brought up thoughts for me on the chapter on Phil Anson that you have from Evil Burritos, and and what we now know as Evil Foods. And I love the quote that was in there that was highlighted, his statement about how he began. And he said, I wasn't saying, there's a gap in the market for burritos. It was like, I like burritos. Everyone likes burritos. So as you were talking with these entrepreneurs, did you notice like that pattern among them, or were some of the launches more strategic?
I think Phil of Evil Burritos is another great story in cooking up a business, because he even told me, he's like, certain things just happen. I got lucky a lot. But I find that a lot of food entrepreneurs follow the same path, where you're just trying things and you're seeing what works. And, obviously if it's not working after a certain point, you shift and you try something new. But I think what also happens is your original product, your original idea, you might come out and say, this is what we're doing, and feel like you're being very strategic about it. But the number of times entrepreneurs change directions, I don't want to say it's 100%, but it's very, very close to that. In my book, there's a man named Zach Liebman who runs a company called Kapali Organics, and they thought their first product, they were so excited about something called banana vinegar, which is made in the Caribbean. They had this whole fair trade set up for it. They thought they were going to introduce it to the United States, kind of like, nobody knew about balsamic vinegar 30 years ago. Great. Now we're going to have everybody love banana vinegar. Well, you probably haven't heard of banana vinegar today. I hadn't until I talked to Zach. And so, guess what? It didn't happen. It didn't work. But now they sell, very successfully fair trade, very organic chocolates from countries where they really pour the money back into the people there. And so it's that ability to pivot and to change and to see what you're doing. And I think that leads back to what you said about Phil Anson of Evil, which is that, whether or not you come into a thing saying, yes, I have a strategic plan, this is exactly where the hole in the market is, you might have that or you might not, but chances are you're probably going to shift things anyways. And so a lot of what happens is just changing constantly. But that's the great thing about food, is that it's easy enough to shift most of the times and try something new. because you don't always have to have the same infrastructure as you might for another type of industry.
That's a good point. Great. Well, so I'm curious about your transition from like traditional employment as a food editor to your current situation. And did you like have a structured plan that you strategically implemented bit by bit, or was there a big plunge? Did it happen?
So I'm definitely more of a Phil style, which is sometimes you just see something that you think is great and you just run for it. Actually, I'm going to use that now, a Phil style. I feel like that's what it is. But more so like Phil. So Guesterly actually started with something my husband and I did for our own wedding, and that was all it was supposed to be. You know, we both had dream full-time jobs. He was an engineer at General Electric's research center. I was a food editor. You know, there was no let's go do this thing on our own. We just made this book of people for our own wedding, mailed it out a week ahead of time, let everybody kind of like see who was coming, give them a guide and insiders who's, and also was a way to show, you know, how much we loved them and knew about them and that they mattered to us. They weren't just another head on the guest list. And that was supposed to be it. It was supposed to be kind of our special DIY project. And Michelle, it just blew up. Our guests loved it. They started asking us then to do it for their weddings. And after we're doing this for our friends' weddings after a while, my husband says, well, you know, we can't keep doing this. We either need to have software to make it really easy or we have to, you know, figure something out. But it's taking so much time, and as much as we love doing it, we're also seeing that people love this. And so I guess for us, we did look and say, wow, there's nothing else like this out there. But that was more of a leap of faith for us to say, all right, let's do a very, I don't want to call it a soft launch, but let's see what we can launch with that's called, you know, a minimum viable product. What
Right.
can we put out there to see if there's as big of a response to this as we think there is? And that's when we both, you know, left our jobs, got ready for it, but we didn't spend very much time prepping it. I think under 2 months, probably way less than 2 months, putting our first iteration out there. And it was only when the response we got to that was off the charts that we said, great, let's dive into this. And that's when we made more of a plan and set more things in motion. But I really recommend starting that way, and I think it's actually similar to how you can start food businesses, is that you don't have to put a lot of time or money investment in up front to see if there is a reaction to your product. In Cooking Up a Business, for example, and Justin, who I was talking about, you know, he started selling at farmers markets, and that's a way to try and see if people react to your product. And then you can scale and grow bigger and bigger. But I would say the first plan we had was to put it out there and see if people wanted it. And then once you find that, you can make bigger and longer term plans and figure out how to execute on those. But first, just see if people want to try it. See if they want to use your software, in my case, or in the case of a food business. See if they want to eat it. If they'll put it in their mouths, if they'll buy it once, and then most importantly, if they'll buy it twice and 3 times and 4 times.
Right. Fantastic. Well, another area that we focus on at Careertopia is how to build a strong network, one where, you know, you provide value to your people in your network over time, and then eventually there will come an opportunity where you will want to leverage that. And so how did you mentioned earlier your contacts that you built in the magazine business. So how did you draw on your network as you developed and launched Guesterly?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that, because I feel like this is the thing I want to preach all the time. And I teach classes sometimes on this topic of food entrepreneurship, and that's the biggest thing. It's all in your network. I had a class a few weeks ago, and I had a panel of guest food entrepreneurs in, and it was so funny without realizing it, because they were each speaking at different times. They all mention their network as one of the most important things. And I think what you find, and definitely what I found, is that your network may be in one area. You know, maybe your network is in food or magazine editors, as mine was. But your network knows so many other people, and your network from college, for example, might be in different areas. And so even though I've kind of shifted industries a little bit, it's amazing how much that network translates for you. And I've been able to add, kind of, I won't say add on tremendously, but the adjacencies of your own network will really grow with you. But I can't say it enough, is go out there, and I know everybody hates the word networking, just go out there and make friends, be friendly, help people, do what you can, follow up, consider a first interaction just that, a first interaction of many. And if you take a little time, I'm actually sitting here at my desk right now, and I have a stack of business cards from people I've met the last few days. And, it's going to take me just a few moments to go through, see who each person was, remember a little bit about them, and then write them a fast note. So easy, and, maybe they write back right now, maybe they don't, but it keeps them in my mind, keeps us on each other's radars, and, maybe we'll meet for coffee after the holidays or something like that. But it's something I try to do, 2 mornings a week, run through it, and then at the same time, have opportunities for your network to come together. And, for example, I'm able to throw a great party with Labor League, which is another great career site, next week here in New York City. And it's a great opportunity for me to celebrate my network, the people who have supported and helped me and are enthusiastic. And so it's also just looking at ways to give back to your network. You don't always have to be calling and asking for an introduction or something. It's just wow, your network should be people you want to hang out with. And once you look at it like that, it's just easy. It's just friends. So I would say immensely important. I know the question was, how did they help with the launch of Yesterday? And I want to say, wow, with everything, from our first employees to the people who helped us get it off the ground, to advice, to press, to connections, to recommendations, to sending us client referrals, everything. And I think that's, if you let them be a part of your story, one of the best things I think we did with Yesterday was share the story journey along the way, mainly via our own personal Facebook networks. But by sharing the story along the way, everything from, which logo do you like better, vote A or B, to, here we just got our first samples and wow, or here we are at the printers. People want to be a part of that story, and letting them, which is was wonderful for us, for them to be a part of the story. They picked our logo, they picked everything, is really impactful, I think, especially when you launch something that's new.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's what I agree with so much what you said. There's several things that I wanted to echo, and I won't, because there was just so much there. So
I know, sorry, I went on too long because I'm so passionate about that area, but there's just so I cannot overemphasize it enough. But I also want to overemphasize that it's not a check it off your list thing. It shouldn't be a bad word, which is why your network is hugely important, but your network is just your friends. Yeah. And those friends don't all have to be your best friend forever and ever. They don't all have to be the friend, have beers with on Friday night, but your friends are there to help you. Maybe some of those friends you see once a year at most, but keep those friends in your loop and help them when you can.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Well, I have one last question for you, Rachel. What advice would you give to someone who's currently considering a career change?
Just do it. Just do it now. You'll always figure it out as you go. There's no time like the present, because I think it's so easy to overthink it. And in cooking up a business, for example, Mary Waldner, the founder of Marathon Crackers, spent a couple of years after she decided to launch her business, figuring a lot of stuff out, which is fantastic. But even now, I think if you talk to her, she'd say, oh yeah, just do it. Do it now. When you're thinking about it, spend some time, make sure you have some skills, make sure you've researched it, but then just do it. Just do it. Life moves way too fast. If you're thinking about it seriously, just do it.
Fantastic.
So all of a sudden you'll leap, and then you're there, and then you're fine.
Yeah. Great. Well, I have really enjoyed talking with you today, Rachel. Your wonderful book, Cooking Up a Business, it's very engaging, and it's going to be available beginning December 3rd. Where can people get it?
Everywhere. Your local bricks and mortar store, your Barnes & Noble, your indie bookstore, online, anywhere. So Kindle, Nook, everywhere in the world, anywhere you want to.
Excellent. So excited for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Michelle, this has been fantastic, and really love the type of questions. It was so fun to think about my own career and that trajectory and share some advice from that. So I appreciate that.
Great. Thanks
I
again.
guess my final words, actually, now I'm thinking about this, my final words is you don't have to plan too far in advance. 5 years ago, I would never think I would be doing what I was doing now. Definitely not 10 years ago. But you just have to be open to what's going to come and what's adjacent and what you can kind of take a leap, and instead of going up a career ladder, maybe it's more a trapeze, and sometimes you just leap to the other trapeze. So if you're open to that, I think it'll take you in a lot of interesting directions.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much. Thanks again for spending time with us today, Rachel. And